How's everybody doing? This is We the Parents podcast. This is episode 19, slowly creeping up on episode 20. So we've been doing this 19 weeks. And Carnell Smith, you're my 19th guest. How are you today?
I'm doing well, Chris. Hey, man, thanks for inviting me to We
Yeah.
the People.
We the parents have
Oh,
got
We
to.
the Parents, my bad.
I had to switch it a little bit. There was copyright on that Constitution thing.
Oh, wow. Well, look, I fall in both groups.
Exactly. So I always like my guests to introduce themselves because you guys know yourselves better than I do. I know a little bit. We've been working together, following each other, sharing things on social media, speaking, corresponding for a year or two now.
Okay.
But for my guests that don't know you, because obviously we're trying to grow a movement and we're trying to grow awareness,
Mhm.
I try to get the best of the best of people that I can find, and you are truly one of the best in your field. Go ahead and tell them who you are, your experience, who you are personally,
Okay.
anything you like to do, your hobbies, and tell us what that field is.
Sure thing, Chris. Thanks again for the opportunity to be on We the Parents. Um, I'm Carnell Smith, the paternity coach. I'm an author, I'm a legal advocate, speaker, and workshop leader. And I primarily work with women, men, and families who are trying to discover the truth and how it might impact their families.
Right.
Because over the last 20 plus years, I've been successful in getting laws changed and helping people form groups to help get the laws changed to prevent men and boys from going to jail and prison for a pregnancy they didn't commit, and it's
Right.
called paternity fraud.
Yeah. Now, and this is something that's not really known unless you've had it happen to you. How many would you say, you might know the numbers better than me? How often does
Okay.
this occur?
Well, here's the thing. According to various geneticists and various studies, the estimate is 15 as up to 15% of the entire population,
Wow.
which will put us in excess of 6 million people.
That's
What we
tremendous.
what we do know for sure of the 1.1 million guys who've been tested and confirmed that they are not the fathers, we don't know for sure whether or not they got their court orders overturned and vacated like I did. And in fact, I'm such a avid supporter of the truth being the standard. Instead of saying money is the best interest for all, I'm saying it should be the truth is the best interest for all.
Absolutely.
Because DNA is being used for over a decade
Right.
to convict and exonerate people who've been falsely accused of murder and a whole bunch of other crimes,
Mm-hmm.
because the DNA is able to narrow it down. In most cases, one person did it. The person that you thought before didn't do it. So here's my position. Why not make every court, whether it's criminal court, family court, traffic court, estate court, whatever it
Right.
is, it should operate based on the truth.
Right.
And when somebody has lied, connived, scandaled, swindled to get the upper hand and take advantage of another party, they shouldn't have the court help them continue to take the money and
Right.
hold a person down, hold a gun on them and says, you will pay this or we'll take it.
Yeah.
That offends everyone who really wants to understand what it would be like to be put in that position. It offends the sensibility of fairness, justice, and just the bottom line of what's right and wrong.
Right. Well, it's as I like to, and many of us like to call it, it's an industry. I believe
I agree
wholeheartedly,
with you.
based on my own experience, that it was designed. It's not flawed or broken. I was using that term forever. Oh, this is broken. The system's broken. We need to
Yeah,
reform it. No, we
yeah,
needed to dismantle it and
yeah.
build a completely different system that has nothing to do with courts or judges or lawyers. Why are lawyers involved with whether or not the mental health of another human being is there, that they're fit enough to be telling the truth about me or that and the other
Mm-hmm.
thing?
Mm-hmm.
If I haven't committed a crime that would
Mm-hmm.
keep me from having my kids,
Mm-hmm.
then your hearsay and feelings, judges shouldn't be making, they shouldn't have discretion over the
Yeah.
law. If it's not clearly stated in the law that says, if you've harmed a child, if you're an active drug user, if you're
Mm-hmm.
incarcerated, or if you've been accused of like convicted of domestic violence, which means that was done in criminal court with beyond a reasonable doubt evidence. You've been proven in a court of law with possibly a jury.
But therein, your very statement points out the same problem that I fell prey to, is
Yeah,
that I thought the family court was a court of law. The
right. It's
family
not.
court is not a court of law. It is called a court of equity.
Hmm.
So, by that definition, being a court of equity, guess who gets to decide what will and won't be admitted into evidence if there are no statutes in law that absolutely restrict their ability?
Right.
The judge. But
Right.
the weird part about it is a judge is actually called a trier of fact. But the people who've been falsely accused in family court, they're like, there's no way that name applies to them.
No, because facts. I would be doing this for 2 years if it was about facts.
Yeah. Well, look, before we go way down the rabbit hole too far, let me give
Yeah.
a short synopsis of my story.
Yeah. Please do.
Because to become an advocate in this way and to be influential in helping more than 11 states get their laws changed, it's not something I set out one day planning to do. I'm
Right.
an engineer. I'm a guy who likes to fish. I like to work on my vehicles at home. I like to troubleshoot. Sometimes I like to work with the guys I know
Yeah.
at the shop. But nothing to get my juices going than to be able to catch crappie season while they're in the shallow water and get out there with a 5-gallon bucket and trying to catch my limit.
Oh man, you're a fisherman for sure. Since you just
Oh,
went,
yeah.
I can feel your passion on that one.
Absolutely. Look, my wife has learned he's got his fishing rods and his bucket. Do not ask when he will be home.
Leave him alone. You're decompressing.
Look, because it's outdoor therapy.
Oh yeah. Oh
So
yeah.
here's my story in a
Yeah.
nutshell. So, like we want men and boys to do, I had a former girlfriend go bring, bring. She made a phone call.
Mm.
She called me after we broke up, several months after we broke up, and she was telling me this amazing story. She was saying that she had a baby. And I said, well, congratulations.
Happy for you.
Well, I didn't say that. I said, I hope you and your baby's dad will be very happy. But why are you telling me this? Look,
Right.
we broke up several months ago, and it's not like I'm keeping tabs on you. Why would you come tell me this? She
Right.
said, because you're the father. I was like, what? How? Wait. There's no need of asking how. All right, I'm well familiar with the hows,
Sure.
but how is it me? And
Yeah. How do you? Yeah.
and since we broke up on February the 15th, she reminded of a certain event that happened on February the 14th and says, you remember that? And I was like, oh, yeah.
Mm.
And I felt like, well, darn it. The Trojan man must have let me down. They
Oh.
failed.
So literally, you used the protection, and she
I
convinced
used-
you that it probably failed,
Yeah, because
or you were just convinced that it failed.
well, this is a person I had dated for 2.5 years. Never knew her to lie about anything. This was a person I
You
trusted.
just trusted,
This is a person I would have trusted with the keys to my house.
even after you split.
Oh, okay. Well, that's a stretch. It's not saying that I wouldn't have given her the keys to my house because I didn't trust her, but
Right.
she said some things to me on February the 15th that led us to saying, well, look, hey, I don't have to take anybody talking to me that way. I tell you what you do. You go your way and I'll go mine.
Right.
I wish you well in life and adios, sayonara.
Yeah.
So at that point, she convinced me and persuaded me that the child was mine based on our coming together back in February. It took me 11 years to find out she actually got pregnant 6 weeks after I broke up with her,
Right.
with the guy she had a relationship with in the adjacent state.
Okay.
Now, I didn't find this out until we went to court. She calls me up saying, well, once again, here's a phone call again. I've been talking to my girlfriends, and according to my girlfriends, you don't pay enough money in child support. I'm like, what? What do I care about what your girlfriends think?
Right.
I was like, well, if you think you can get more, take me to court.
Right.
Well, I had no idea how that family court worked.
Sure. No, you thought it was a justice system, right?
I thought they would look at how much I spend on the child, how much I pay for my son. I got a new wife with a baby. Our newborn was coming any day now.
Yeah.
And me and my wife had waited 8 years before we became parents. And at this point, the court awarded my ex-girlfriend about 40% of my take-home pay. She was looking to get about $1,800 a month. That was more than my house payment.
One baby.
And that was going to literally put me, wife, and newborn out on the streets. And if you know anything about the way family court works, it's pay or go to jail.
Yep.
So literally, I had a discussion with my pastor's dad, and I just asked her, like, hey, brother, man, I just need you to pray for me. I do not see how I'm going to make it. I work 60 hours a week. I'm on call 24/7. I can't work at a job. And as it is, I do good if I get 6.5 hours of sleep. There's no way I could work any further.
No.
And he says, you need to take a paternity test. And he said, based on what he saw happen to men in the Air Force, he said, you need to get a paternity test.
Mm-hmm.
I took the test fully expecting to convince him that I was the father. Those results come back at 0% paternity. And after, man, I was totally crushed.
So you took this friend's advice, and literally you were just
pastor's dad.
You were just appeasing him. You had no thought in your head that this was going to prove otherwise.
We have such a great, strong relationship. He's my elder. You know, he's my pastor's father, and he's given me a lot of great wisdom and sound. Man, he's given me a whole lot of great sound advice over the years. He's helped me when I was in management. He's given me great advice in managing people and teams. And when he made that recommendation, it was just go do it.
Yeah.
When those results came back, I'm like, what? It came back like literally days before my wedding anniversary. And
you were shocked.
0.0% paternity. Carnell Smith is not the biological father of said child.
And a lot of times, does it come back 0 if it's negative, or it's like
if it's negative, it is 0.
It's always 0. Okay.
Look, it is called the calculation is called a probability of paternity.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if it's 0, what's the probability of paternity?
Like 6 or 7, I don't know.
No.
It's been a while since I took government math.
Look. I'm an engineer by trade. I've taken calculus, but this doesn't require anything more than your fingers. You know what I mean?
Carnell, this is the same. I think it's this company right here that says "Be less white."
Wow. I'm not qualified to comment on that, but let me just finish up with this.
Sure.
The short story is that I thought, okay, wait a minute. This DNA test proves that somebody lied here. It wasn't me. And this person has lied to me, to their child, to the court, and to their own attorney.
Yeah.
And there's no way I'm going to agree to fork over that much money now for a child that's not mine. And by the way, the more, as we went to court, she started interfering with the parenting time. I had a court order that says I'm supposed to get the kid.
She doesn't, it's not, but she doesn't even clearly even want you around. It was totally about money.
Well, I don't know. I do have suspicions about how I got selected. I found out the other guy was recently joining the Army, and I had 2 cars, a 3-bedroom house with fireplace. I had my day job as an engineer, and I had
you were a target.
And I had my weekend gig where I had 8 crews of DJs working for my company, QFP Productions.
Oh, wow.
So
I did not know that about Carnell Smith. I didn't know you did that.
Yeah.
That's cool.
In fact, I've actually done some of my own voiceover work in the past.
Really? We should have a voiceover battle, you and me.
I
feel like we should.
Why battle? We could simply compliment each other.
Exactly. We need more hugs and kisses in this world.
Yeah. But look, here's my crazy rational thinking is, hey, This judgment, this thing should be over with in court 15 minutes tops. Let me see.
Right.
Hobo, watch up.
You
Look,
got the
Hobo,
piece of
watch up.
paper.
15 minutes tops. We
Mm-hmm.
get there to court, and they said, there's no way that test is right. He must have had somebody else take his test. That test has to be wrong. So I said, well,
Wow.
if you think the test is wrong, I will take another test. Long as we do this new test immediately.
Mm-hmm.
Took them several weeks to do the other test. And this time the test is done with me, her, and the child. Same results. What's the number? Boom. Goose
Boom.
eggs.
Goose egg.
Somebody caused her pregnancy, and it wasn't me.
Right.
Look,
So can I ask you this question? You mentioned the other guy.
yeah.
Was she not with the other guy when she threw this in your face? This was just a fling or a temporary short-term relationship?
Look, I don't know.
She couldn't get him. She didn't ask him.
It's my understanding her and her girlfriend had a weekend at this guy's apartment with him and his friend.
She didn't really know him, and you were probably financially
I don't know. Look,
more
I don't
fit.
know. Listen, I don't know that. I'm not qualified to say that. What
I
do
love
know
making
is,
assumptions.
Look, what I do know is 11 years later, after we now have 2 DNA tests that prove Carnell Smith didn't cause this pregnancy, and just like my tagline says, if the genes don't fit, you must acquit. I was demanding, not asking, please, I'm demanding that you turn me loose and let me go. Get your hands off my money.
Right.
Get your hands off my family's assets. Get out of my life and leave me the heck alone.
Yeah.
Now, I did ask, I said, listen, since my family and I love your daughter, we've had a relationship with it. Look, we'll still do stuff for her if we're allowed to see her.
Right.
The mother countered back and said, no, unless you agree to stay under the court order. And
Insanity.
Then demanded that I pay for supervised visitation. I said, you're out your ever-loving mind. There's no way I'm going to pay.
Did any of this behavior, let's talk about the mental health aspect of this. Did any of this behavior red flag to you throughout the relationship? Is that why you broke up? Or was this totally left field once you guys split? That she would just do and say these things.
Well, that behavior was a surprise to me.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but from having interviewed thousands of men and boys and teenagers over the last 20 plus years, that behavior is actually typical.
Wow.
Because some of the mothers picked the guy that they wanted to be.
They're targeted.
There you go. Some of them pick the guy who they think will be the better father candidate. And mind you, some of them actually pick the guy who has the resources.
Sure, that makes sense.
You've heard of hypergamy, and that's not unusual. That's not, not a surprise there. But, I can't say with absolutely certainty what was going on in her head, mind, heart, etc. All I know is that once I knew the truth, if you're not going to let me see the child, and by the way, I want to see the child with no court order, no paying no child support.
Yeah.
I will not agree to pay one dime under a court order.
This is just about two people agreeing to share the love of a child.
If you'll let me and my family see her, we'll spend money on her because we had a relationship with her. All right. But I felt also you need to tell her who her biological father is, and she needs to meet him. God forbid a kid grow up and ends up dating their brother.
Something.
It has actually happened. I've seen cases where young lady has a baby, gets a DNA test, and the child's father is her biological brother who her mother had an affair with his dad.
Oh my God. And they're probably like, we have such a connection. I don't know what it is.
Exactly.
We're related.
But now let me collapse it some more. All right. If you're like me, you're thinking, well, we can prove he didn't do it. I didn't say speculate. We're not wondering. And it shouldn't be my job to prove who did. I didn't do it.
Right.
You lied to me.
Right.
You duped me. I'm the one who got suckered, snookered, fugabooed, tricked,
extorted,
scandaled. And I also sued for all of my money back plus damages and attorney's fees. I wanted it all back.
Sure.
because I know what would have happened if I hadn't paid child support for 11 years. The court in my state had the ability to set a order retroactively all the way back to birth, including child birth.
They did that to me. Yep.
So you know I'm not making this up.
Nope.
So
I'm living it.
So I went to court, and what I thought would be over with in 15 minutes, the judge says it's your fault that you didn't find out sooner and left the order in place saying that I had to pay. So I went on a tear. I continued to keep my case alive, and I appealed this all the way through to the United States Supreme Court, and I presented the High Court of the U.S. with the data of over 1.1 million men and boys similarly affected where DNA proved they didn't do it.
Wow.
The High Court had 2 meetings about my case. I also was lobbying for new legislation that I helped to co-write. My state representative lived in my neighborhood, and man, I don't know if you're a believer in faith or not, but
I am.
I believe God made it so that the right person that I needed to talk to, I didn't even have to go so far. I could walk to his house from my house. We literally lived in the same neighborhood. And he was on the the House Representative Special Judiciary Committee. So we actually got the law passed before my case was heard. And the court made me send them a copy of the new law in the special booklet format, another $900.
Yeah.
And so at this point, I'm out several $1,000s on the appeals to all of the courts. Right now, I'm estimating my out-of-pocket somewhere around $250,000 of a legal battle. And U.S. Supreme Court said petition denied. Now, that's supposed to be the highest court in the land.
The smartest and best with justice.
Now, between you and me, my father did make me into a quitter. He told me, said, sometimes you might need help. You might have to find somebody who's done it before, partner with, align yourself with them, be coachable, be teachable, and be willing to do what they show you to do.
Right.
Well, I remember some stuff that I wrote into that legislation when we had a reconciliation meeting between the House and the Senate, because the one side of the House of Representatives passed the bill as we wrote it.
Yeah.
The Senate didn't like it, and they made a whole bunch of changes. So they called me up and said, Carnell, we are going to pass this bill today. Look, what do you want in it? However, you got to do it right here, right now, in this meeting. And I rewrote that legislation on the spot in such a way that helped the greatest number of paternity fraud victims. And then I went back to court on February 6, 2003, and I won using a law that I was lobbying for other people.
That's kind of cool.
That's called poetic. Look, that is poetic justice.
I want to stop you there, because you mentioned something that I firmly believe, which is the same reason that I'm doing a podcast about family law and paternity fraud. This was not in my 10-year plan. I was going to be a rock star, and you were going to be a fisherman, and I'm a musician, and I was going to raise my kids. And these are all the things that I want to do. But circumstances, I believe that there's certain ones of us, and that doesn't mean that everybody couldn't do it. And I encourage others to do what you and I are doing, however they can advocate in their own strength, in their own talent, in their own ability. Do something.
Yes.
But do you feel that there was a point where they pushed you that changed it from you just trying to fix Carnell's problem to screw this? Now you got a war on your hands, and I'm fighting for everybody else.
Absolutely. Had they just let me go,
I
would have never spent the time doing analysis on my state. Look, I am a data engineer professionally.
Yeah.
So when my legislature says, well, we need to know that, because I requested public hearings. I don't do any backdoor meetings when I do family law legislation. Sure. I believe it needs to be out front, and I invite the media. I do that for 2 reasons. One, leveraging the media helps them get a great story. And 2, it helps me find more people who are affected without me having to pay for the advertising to get on prime time.
Absolutely.
And as a
Smart.
result, this has allowed me to get on international media, been on Dr. Phil with one of my clients.
Yeah.
I'm in Time Magazine and several other major outlets, about 200 of them. And I'm featured in several movies, and I have a cameo in the Red Pill movie.
I know. I saw that movie. I was like, I know that guy.
But listen, it was never, and it's still not about me. And even why I wrote my book. I wrote my book to inspire some more advocates because only 11 or so states have actually fixed the problem.
Which is absurd because it shouldn't be a problem.
Correct.
Wow.
So, and what that means is unless you get legislation that specifically states by statute, judicial discretion can just disregard your DNA test and just says, oh no, look, that order's been in place for 4 years and we have a 2-year time limit and you didn't figure it out in 2 years. And then I asked this question before the legislature. I said, you guys implemented the Uniform Parentage Act that said, between ages 2 to 5, depending on each state, they could decide that one state says if you're 2-year-old, you can't challenge it. If the 5-year-old's in another state, 3-year-old. I said, which of these states require the one person who has all of the information to make that disclosure within the time limit so that the men and boys who have signed a paternity confession can make an informed decision based on full and truthful disclosure?
Right.
The room got totally quiet, Chris.
Of course it did.
And then I said this. I said, and then you can tell by the amount of melanin in my skin.
Melanin. Oh, geez.
I'm about to say something that you can't say because if you did it, you'd probably get canceled.
I have no
major
melanin.
media.
Guess
what I'm about to say. Paternity fraud is slavery.
Absolutely.
Because it is using a person who is involuntarily a hostage and a servant for financial benefit of another party against their will, especially after they know the truth.
That sounds very mighty libertarian of you. Do you flirt with libertarians at all? Do you hang out in that realm?
So I have some libertarian tendencies. I am a social, I'm actually a fiscal conservative. I don't believe in having a big enough government to do everything for you.
Sure.
Okay. I don't believe in equal outcomes. I believe that the starting line should be equal.
Right.
So we shouldn't exclude Chris because Chris doesn't have this amount of melanin.
Equal opportunity, not
equal opportunity to step up to the line, but we
not
should
equity.
Guarantee the outcomes. If Chris and Carnell are willing to do the work, and they both do the work at a level of performance that demands the excellence, and they should be compensated
accordingly
based on their work.
I think that's about as logical as one can be.
Yeah, but the socialist-minded folks don't agree with that.
I don't like them.
They actually want special privilege on the outcome, but that's not my primary topic.
Yeah. I didn't want to bring up politics. When you said that there's definitely a lot of methodology and ideologies of a libertarian mindset. That's also conservative as well. I think conservatives try to disguise themselves a little bit as libertarians, but I think libertarians take it to the nth degree of everything and all. Like government shouldn't have. You want to do LSD, you do it, and if you kill someone, you held accountable for that,
and you get the consequences from your own actions of personal responsibility.
You can harm your own body. You can drink bleach if you want to.
And
if you hurt someone when you do drugs, then you then you get punished for things like murder or that and this and that.
Agreed.
But not to get too far into politics.
Well, let me say this, because I have to be involved in politics.
Oh, sure.
Because if you are going to be a legislative advocate, I've watched for years, people limit their potential to get something done by having an allegiance. Look, they bring their personal political views into a family law discussion when you really need to work with whoever's been elected to the seat.
Right.
So let me tell you what I did. I understood that by studying what Dr. Martin Luther King and other groups who were doing things successfully, like many people like Mark Ludwig of the Equal Shared Parenting Movement
Yeah.
and many others. You have your personal view, but you got to lay that aside when you got to speak to a person who is of a different political ideology.
Right.
But the issue is not about the political ideology. The issue is about the family impact. The issue is about what's unjust, what is unfair, what is unright. So in my case, I was able to get 163-0 of legislative support from my House of Representatives, and that included libertarians, Republicans, Democrats, and yes, there were even some socialists there.
Yeah.
What does that tell you? You
Yeah.
got to be able to talk to everybody in a way that they understand the issue. And one of the things I learned from Dr. Martin Luther King and studying him and several others was he says, help a man walk a mile in your shoes. So when I talk to the legislators, I put them in the story. Whether you man or woman, I learned how to show them what this was like if it happened to them.
Yeah.
And my Senate voted 45-5 in favor of the bill. And the governor, who is of a different political ideology than me, he signed the bill because a year earlier he told me there was nothing he could do unless legislation came across his desk. And I said, I tell you what, I understand. I'll be back. And in one calendar year, we got this through the House, through the Senate, and we got the signature from the governor. So what I'm trying to inspire people to, don't tell me about what's not possible. Look, was it difficult to give up all of my vacation time and spend hours upon hours at the Capitol, take legislators to lunch and to tell them about the victims and the people who were in worse shape than me? And I never led with my story. I'm talking about the people who can't even choose to pay for their health insurance because if they don't pay this child support, they're going to prison.
Right. Yeah. I mean, so did you ever wind up going to jail, or did you just pretty much go bankrupt, give away all your assets?
Dude, I went bankrupt fighting this. All right. But here's the thing I decided to do. I became very public.
Yeah.
I became so public that paternity fraud, a relatively obscure, unknown term, has become very popular largely because of my efforts. I'm not the originator of the term.
Right.
But I've helped to popularize it to the point that where finally people start to say, well, you know what? If this happened to me, my son, my grandson, no, I wouldn't be okay with it. And even feminists, radical feminists who watched me debate Gloria Allred, and they told me I kicked her butt on that debate at Dr. Phil.
I got to pull that up.
They told me when I asked this one question, I said, if this was your son and the police were picking him up to take him to jail for refusing to pay child support, you had the DNA test in your hand that proves that your son didn't do it. I asked these feminists, how long would they be quiet as their son was being taken away in handcuffs? And you know what every one of them said?
Yeah.
Oh, heck no. Gloria's wrong on this one.
See, women will protect themselves and their own children. But when you put that in their hand that way and you go, imagine if this was your son. Imagine if a woman, alienated you from, your grandchild.
I've been an alienated parent.
Yeah. It's like, and some of them get it. And unfortunately, the really unhealthy, emotionally, mentally unhealthy ones possibly
it has a lot to do with presentation. Unless there are some, and I'll concede, there are some people who are so intellectually dishonest that you could put it down and say 1 + 1 = 2. They still wouldn't get it.
Right.
Because they have such a bias, vitriolic spirit toward men. They have a true hatred toward men. They say, well, if the guy's a paternity fraud victim, it's his fault. He did something to make her cheat.
Right. And I mean, you could say that largely that might have to do with trauma, whether it be abuse in the home, being fatherless themselves. They have a distaste for men in general, whether they had really negative experiences.
but they pick those guys that they're in relationship with.
Well, because
And
their dad was probably that way.
look, but I tell them, I says, regardless of the outcome, it doesn't absolve you of personal responsibility.
Exactly.
Regardless of what the ex-girlfriend did with me, I was the person that let her in my life. I will
Yeah.
own that part of it.
I
What
had
I
some,
will
yeah.
not do is own the fact that she lied, because I was already out of the picture.
Mm-hmm.
It was a phone call, and she persuaded me that that pregnancy was caused by me.
Yeah.
Had the truth been known and told, you would have never heard of me. But here's what I also believe. I believe God knows there's people who He has raised up who have the heart and the spirit of a warrior,
Mm.
because the fight was bigger than me. It wasn't just about me. The more I did media, the more I met people who were down and out, literally could not feed and clothe their own kids, who lived with them, husband and wife, based on sending 40, 50, 60% of their income cross town to the ex-wife. And none of the kids from the previous marriage are his. And
Yeah.
they're telling this guy, it's your fault you didn't figure it out sooner. Yeah, that's the clip.
Hey, can I play this? I
Go
just
for
found
it.
this. All right, let's have a listen to this because I've never heard it. So I like to just impromptu on this show.
All right, here's a question today. Should a man ever be forced to pay child support for another man's baby? Now, Carnell Smith calls himself Man for Justice and says that he is tired of seeing women fraudulently trap men and get away with what he calls the perfect crime. Take a look.
Paternity fraud is a big problem. It has already happened to over 1 million men. In my case of paternity fraud, my ex-girlfriend called me one day, told me that she was pregnant. And I told her, congratulations. I hope you and your baby's daddy be very happy. But then she says, but you're the father. I paid child support for 11 years before I found out the child wasn't mine. I was cuckolded. Cuckolding is the term that the cuckoo bird lays its egg in another bird's nest and lets another bird raise its young. I got 2 DNA tests. Once I found out that the child wasn't mine, I contacted my lawyer and says, I'm not going to pay her another dime. My ex-girlfriend asked the court specifically to put me in jail and make me pay the money that I had not paid. That infuriated me. When I went to court, I felt that at that point, I should be able to win my case with 2 DNA tests. I didn't lie here. We can prove I didn't lie, and we can prove who did. And the judge says it's my fault that I didn't find out sooner. It's pay or go to jail. That was a bit hard to take. I appealed that to the Georgia Court of Appeals. They refused to let me appeal it. I refer to paternity fraud as the perfect crime because the victim gets blamed for the conduct of the other party. I never felt like giving up the fight. I was very effective in advocating a position for the Georgia paternity fraud victims. I ended up getting a bill that frees men who've been falsely accused of a pregnancy they didn't commit. My tagline is, if the genes don't fit, you must acquit.
That's it. That's the promo piece.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I was looking for the debate.
You actually have to get the whole video. The segment is called Parent Trap. And
Okay.
it's with one of my clients, a doctor whose ex-wife had an affair with a man of another race. And she felt that it was okay to make her ex-husband continue to pay her for the baby she had on her affair. Now, here's the contrast. Yeah. Listen to the contrast in incomes. My client was a guy who worked his way out of the barrio, out of the old neighborhood, worked his way, graduated, did honors, became a teaching doctor on staff at 2 hospitals. So he was getting jacked for $3,000 a month.
God.
He felt just as ticked off about it as I did, looking at an amount of $1,800 a month. He didn't like it. He didn't like it any more than a teenager who's being ordered to pay $75 a month, and the kid's not his either. And by the way, this lady came on Dr. Phil trying to justify why she should still be able to make her ex-husband pay instead of her co-worker who she had the affair with coworker is a counselor at the high school she worked at. My client is a doctor on staff at 2 hospitals, and he teaches other doctors. Guess who makes more money?
I choose plan C.
Yeah.
I choose door number 3. Neither one of them.
Look, the one with the doctor's checkbook in it.
Yes, the one that can also write prescriptions.
Drugs. That's called drugs.
Yeah. My God, literally what you're saying and what you're telling us that most people wouldn't believe. No, most people wouldn't believe that there is an equal shared parenting. If they've never been, I spoke with one of our legislators here in North Carolina. He's an amazing man. So he's such an amazing man that I realized that he's from a different world where people are honest, people have integrity. And if you don't, well, you just don't associate with them. But he married a good woman. He has a good family life. And when I told him about what was going on, he was in disbelief. He goes, "How long have you been doing this?"
Yeah.
2 years. Well, have you clearly, did you do anything? Have you checked my criminal record?
Yeah.
I got some speeding tickets. I got a DUI once. Kids weren't in the car.
Yeah.
They don't, last time I checked, DUIs, they don't come get people's kids when parents have DUIs. Now, if those kids are in the car, absolutely. You put those children in danger. You should have some behavioral modifications, some assessments, go to AA. You should do things to get back your parental rights. It should always be, especially if there's some sort of offense, that there should be either some rehabilitation or something like that. We should be encouraging, unless there's violence against the child. A parent is always going to be imperfect. God, back in the day, all of us kids would have been taken away from our parents. I was climbing trees at 8 years old down the neighborhood, out of sight of my parents. You do that today, that's neglect.
Yeah. There's a lot of wonkiness in the way things are being done today. But
And
I will say this.
Yeah.
That as also one who is a vocal advocate for a presumption of equal shared parenting, because until I experienced issues with my son. I had a fiance. We lived together. All of a sudden, I was not allowed to be involved in my son's life just because we no longer lived at the same address.
So you experienced this as well.
I've experienced parental alienation, and then the mother moved to another state. Listen, that's almost a death sentence on the parent-child relationship for parents when the other party moves away. And if you can't get your court order enforced to see your kid when you live 5 miles down the street from them, you're going to catch hell seeing your kid when they're 500 miles away. You fly in town to pick your kid up on your court ordered time for summer vacation. The other parent makes sure they are not home during the entire weekend
or something.
You're in town. And say, well, I changed my mind about them being able to go.
Yeah.
So I firmly believe that, look, if we are good enough to pay financially, then, and those of us who want to be active, involved parents, we shouldn't start at 0% for parenting time. It should be equal, and then you do an adjustment from there.
Right.
Because look, I'll be honest with you. I know there are guys who were involved with the mother, and she was really Miss Right Now. That was the extent of the relationship. There ain't no way you're gonna get him to marry her just because there's a kid that's on the scene. And I would not encourage him to do something crazy like that either.
Right.
But if he's saying, well, in spite of my differences between you and I want to have an active hand in helping this child, and I want to make sure this child has an equal relationship with both sides of their family. That they know me, that they know their meemaw, their pawpaw, Uncle Joe, cousin.
Yeah, because the other side of the family gets alienated too.
Typically, and let's be honest, that it's like 80% women who file for divorce.
Yeah.
And that means, in addition to losing half your income, your assets by no-fault divorce, you very well may end up not seeing your kids, and you've done nothing wrong other than you made the choice of choosing the wrong mate to be married to.
And maybe you were the bad one. Maybe she was. Really doesn't matter.
And but that should be examined apart from the relationship of the kid. If that parent is not a threat or a danger to the child.
Yeah, if you weren't trying to protect me from my kids while I was with you,
Yeah.
why are you pretending like you need to now?
Well, like I said, look, in my case, they wouldn't allow me to see the child anymore, and demanded that if I did, I'd pay for supervised visitation. I'm like, wait, not my child. You want me to pay under pay, go to jail, and now you want me to pay for supervised visitation?
Mm-hmm.
Not going to happen.
That's logical. That's so logical.
Listen, did I also say this to you, man? The judge on my original case came to the signing of the legislation and apologized to me face to face and said he was wrong on his original ruling and that he was glad that the law had changed. Man, that further emboldened me to light a fire. And then I went from Georgia to Florida to Wisconsin. I've helped legislators there in North Carolina. They didn't pass it.
Yeah, they're stubborn here.
Yeah. But listen, because people won't do all of the steps. The major problem I see, even with equal shared parenting and also with paternity fraud legislation, people have an assumption of how easy they think this should be, and think I should be able to go down to the House of Representatives or to the Senate. Let me have one meeting for 5 minutes and zip zam done. Like
you think.
Look, and you believe in the Easter Bunny and the Tooth Fairy.
It's like if anyone else came to my house and kidnapped my child, we would care. We'd be sending out alerts. There'd be an Amber Alert on my phone right now. Can I get an Amber Alert, please?
But here's the part that many of those people don't understand. Now, I know, man, my friend Mark Ludwig and several others I've talked to out there, they understand the opposition is getting funding. So it has become a revenue. And what amazes me is the number of child support enforcement agencies that are under the Department of Revenue for the state.
Sure.
And how much that they will object to changes in divorce law, changes in equal share parenting, changes in the child support calculation reform, changes in paternity fraud law, because the Title 4D, Section 458, bonuses, incentives to the state section, a pool of over $500 million. It lays down some metrics that they have to meet every year.
Mm-hmm.
A few of those metrics are they have to improve on their number of paternities they get established. But it doesn't say they have to be accurate paternities.
Yeah.
They also say they must improve on their child support collections.
That's like being able to be on the New York Yankees for at bats, but never getting a hit.
Yeah. Well, the reason I started studying this was because I wanted to understand why was there so much opposition to saying, well, why not make the truth the standard in the law?
You'd think.
And look, and in all other avenues, we see that children who have equal shared parenting time with both sides of their family tend to be the children who do not end up in the juvenile justice system, and they don't end up in the criminal justice system. Mm-hmm. So they manage to bypass the prison and school pipeline that goes from straight to the other, because the kid who is left to themselves hook up with the wrong crowd, gets influenced to do the wrong things.
Well, the prison industrial complex and the mental health industries and pharmaceutical industries love broken children.
And
they love it.
And when we ask this question, well, wait a minute. If the whole goal is for society to benefit as a whole, we should be helping the kid have protected rights to both sides of his or her family.
Right, because we know the data when that doesn't happen.
Exactly.
And it's detrimental. It's literally saying when you don't do your best in every aspect to encourage an equal relationship, like I said, even if there's a parent that might have some issues, well, then you work with that parent to get that child in his life involved, get that parent healthy. That's what we should be focused on. Because if you're not, you're saying, I don't care about kids, using the guidelines of the best interest of a child. That's ignorant. There you go. Ignorant.
Instead, it's best interest of the money for the state. Because I figured it out. I was like, wait a minute. with this much opposition. I said, how much money? And guess what? We almost got a bill for California called the Paternity Justice Act. We got it past both houses. Someone in the child support agency, from what we've been told,
No kidding.
told the governor back then, Governor Gray Davis in California, they told him, if you sign this bill, the state will lose $40 million in child support money. So he vetoed the bill.
That he should be locked up because he swore an oath to the Constitution and protect the citizens of that state. He should be put in prison.
But listen though. Oftentimes, if no one is there to represent our interests, to speak on behalf of the other side, the way a lot of these laws got passed, it was a lot of the feminist groups and other groups were there.
Domestic violence.
The Bar Association. And some of my greatest opposition has been the Bar Association, the family law section of the bar in state level, national level. But it's not, look, I'm not casting a net to say that's everybody, every attorney, because I have great supporters in judiciary, from judges, from attorneys, from legislators. They're like, we hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
If we could really simplify these matters, 'cause let's be honest here, Chris. These cases where people aren't getting to see their kids could be resolved in roughly a half an hour once you got all the information in. If that was the goal.
30 days. I mean, we'll give you 30 days.
Okay, stretch it.
Instead of 2 years, I'll give you a month.
But did you catch what I said? I said, if that was the goal.
Sure, it's not, obviously, it's clearly not the goal.
What happens oftentimes, the number one, and I had lawyers tell me this, one of the second highest contributor to bankruptcy is people with family law cases.
Yep.
The number one contributor to people leading to bankruptcy is an unplanned, uncovered medical situation that they didn't have the funds to cover.
And you think that should be number one, far vast over the first one, and anything else should be medical.
Yeah.
It should just be that. That should be the thing, because most people get sick. Not everybody's well off enough or has insurance or this and that. That should stand alone at number one.
Right.
And family law shouldn't even be in the same category, because it shouldn't cost us this much to be parents in the United States.
Family law and child support enforcement should not be revenue generating activity for the state.
No incentives, no financial incentives.
Federal funding is taxpayer money that came from us. To have your state jump over hurdles to make sure they get the money by any means necessary. And they're not above lying to get the money, by the way.
Yeah.
Listen, I had about 6 representatives from the Child Support Enforcement Agency in the hearing on the day that I won, and I did not have a welfare case.
Wow.
And I wanted to understand why was that so. Here's what I, of my own opinion, have surmised. If one of these guys gets out and that case becomes a precedent, then all of the rest of them who are trapped by law will be able to use that case to open the door to their jail sentence, to open the door to their prison sentence. If more men and women who have been locked out of the lives of their kids, and by the way, this upcoming weekend is Father's Day, and it is the second loneliest holiday of the year.
Why is that? Let's talk about the numbers of the fatherless epidemic.
Look, the first loneliest holiday is Christmas. Because you got your court order. Your court order, usually, if you would, at least as a bare minimum, you got Father's Day and you got rotating holidays. But you get no holidays when the other party says, oh, no, those rules don't apply to me.
Yeah.
Those rules apply to you. It says you better have my money by the 5th.
Right.
Hey, Judge, he's late again. And when I asked him when was he sending the money, he cussed me out and hung up on me.
And then told me he wants to see his child first.
Yeah.
What a jerk. Lock him up.
Yep. and I've been in child support court and literally watched a judge ask her, well, what do you think? I'm like, wait a minute. This shouldn't be up to her.
Why, and that's the weirdest thing. It's almost the judges I only hear that they only ask typically when they don't want the burden of the decision, and they know the mother's going to either lock him up or do something that benefits the state.
Well, we've asked this question. If the person who you're about to lock up has a job and is gainfully employed, how is taking his or her license and putting them in jail going to help them pay the child support? Because if you convict this person of a felony for child abandonment, you just made this person unemployable.
Sort of counterproductive, isn't it?
It's called, the sheer logic of us having this saying, well, gee,
well, either way, Carnell, the state still makes lots of money from the prison industrial complex, and then they hope
you would think they were partners.
And if not, someone will probably put a gun to their head, or they'll get lost in drug addiction and alcoholism, which DUIs make a lot of money too. And you know what else does? Mental health. And man, if I'm depressed and anxious, I might get a bunch of pharmaceuticals also. So it's great for government to destroy lives. Isn't it fun?
And it happens so much that you gotta believe that it's by design. Those of us who've taken the time to study it, it's like, because when I for years when I talked to people who were, let's say, in Georgia, they thought it only happened to Georgians. Well, guess what? When I talked to groups in D.C. while I was there doing a media event, the people in Washington D.C. thought it was only them. I heard the same thing in Florida, Wisconsin, North Carolina, South Carolina, California, Oklahoma.
My state's
Texas.
The worst.
Look, South Dakota, North Dakota, you name them.
Alaska.
Hawaii. I've even done DNA tests for people in Hawaii and Alaska, and guess what? It's not a limited issue.
You know they're making babies in Hawaii.
Well, hey, I think California might have them beat, because California has become so good at the child support money machine. California has managed to collect over $1 billion in the bonus money over a 15-year period.
Title IV money?
Yes.
So California alone holds $15 billion?
I'm saying California has been able to collect over $1 billion.
That's insane.
So can we say they are good? And at one time, California had a default rate of establishing paternities almost 80%. And I may as well tell this audience here, they need to know, because look, whether you say to me that, oh man, this doesn't apply to me, listen, there's no proof required to sue a man or boy for paternity and to set child support. Let me say that slower. There is no proof required to put you down as the father of a child. And if for any reason you don't show up at court, like they gave the court the wrong address, the court will make the decision that you are the daddy. Look, one of my affiliates back in the 2000s had over 600 veterans, Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, Coast Guard, National Guard. All of these men, married and single men, were paternity fraud victims. So if we'll do it to the people who will put their life on the line, then nobody's safe. And I know 5 pastors who are paternity fraud victims from their former ex-wife, who was the first lady of the church. Nobody is exempt. Carnell Smith is on record as saying, if we want to get to the problem and nip it in the bud, we'll do DNA testing at birth. We'll do samples on the mother, the father, at least do the mother and the child on the birth, and then get the guy's sample as soon as you can get a hold of him. And then you will have the true facts. And then the court could make an informed decision. You know what? When I brought up that idea, they said, man, you're being unfair toward women. And one judge said, these DNA tests are being weapons against women.
The truth is being weaponized against our lies.
Yes.
Stop that.
A judge is publicly stated saying that. And France actually passed a law that says you can't get a paternity test unless you have the permission of the mother.
So what they've done, ladies, and this is my opinion, Carnell doesn't have to be a part of the crazy things I say on my show. They've weaponized you, ladies. They've weaponized your fight for equality, and they've figured out how to use you and our children, your children. They've entitled you with this not only equal, but putting you up on a pedestal to where they've created a facade and a narrative that all men are abusive, all women are victims. We must protect children at any cost. That men are the toxic
Brutes.
masculinity, and
Brutes.
and the patriarchy is being destroyed.
And they are
Meanwhile,
misandrous.
ladies, it's not toxic masculinity that's creating this massive gender confusion.
No.
It's not toxic masculinity that's creating necessarily all these mass shootings, all this depression, all this anxiety, all this fear.
These are fatherless boys that are doing
These
this.
men are growing up, and it's not that they're necessarily fatherless, but you could maybe their dad was fatherless.
No active dad in their life.
Active and or abusive. And if he does have if he or she, the children, female or male, have a abusive father in their home, I can guarantee you it's not toxic masculinity. Ask the question, what's the root cause of that father being an alcoholic, abusive, this and that? Ask him about his father or his father or his mother. There is a lineage. This is trauma. We're talking about trauma. We're not talking about men are toxic and women are victims and heroines. You don't have to put your knee on the back of a man, hate to say it that way, to raise women up. No. Men and women, good, healthy men and women want equality. And we work with good women every single day, whether they're lawyers or advocates or mothers, stepmothers. And if you are against the best interest of the child being having an equal relationship with a mother and father, you are part of the brainwash system. Or you grew up in trauma yourself. And that's the truth. These are two good men who were alienated from their children. I'm still going through it. This man's made had a lot of success advocating. I'm sure his children love him and love the fact that he continues to do this for men like me. And Carnell, I appreciate you.
Oh,
you could have gotten out of this. Yeah, you got what?
I got reconnected with my son.
Beautiful.
He found me. He searched for me on the internet while he was doing a web training class at Walt Disney.
Oh, wow.
And he went out and found me and emailed me. So
when was that?
Oh, that was back when he was about 12, after being separated for nearly 6-7 years.
Would he like to come on this show and do a show with you?
Oh, I'd have to ask him. Well, see,
that would be great to have that conversation.
Right now, U.S. Marine Sergeant, retired, disabled, was injured after 3 tours of duty in Iraq. At this point, he has some recurring challenges from his injuries in the war. So if he was amenable to do it, I would love to talk with him. But I can tell you that once he bypassed his mom, he says, based on my mom's character, I believe there had to be more to the story than she was telling me.
Yeah.
He said he wanted to hear from me for himself.
He wanted to make the judgment call. He had questions.
Look, he did. He
Mm-hmm.
did.
Yeah.
So for those later years when this person, my ex-fiance, and what broke us up was her thinking that I'd be okay with her dating other people while she was living in my house.
Yeah,
that was a deal breaker.
Yeah. They make crazy men and women, guys.
You ever heard of this radical concept? A one-woman man?
Uh-huh.
I'm that dude.
I'm that guy. I'm that guy.
I'm that dude.
I am that guy.
And by the way, I just celebrated my 30th wedding anniversary with my wife. I married the right woman this time. And
congratulations.
DNA testing proved that the daughter I had with her is both of our biological.
So you did that. You both agreed to do that.
Absolutely.
That's cool. And she didn't get mad at you or nothing. It was like, okay, yeah, I'll appease.
She said, I have nothing to hide. And she took the test with my pastor and the pastor's wife as witnesses.
I think as a man pushing for that, the fact that your wife said that was okay because she supports what you do, I think that's beautiful.
Well, here's what people don't know, though, Chris. If you believe her, and I don't care how long you've been in a relationship with her, I had one client commit suicide over this because he married his high school sweetheart under these words: I'm pregnant and you're the father. Then we got to get married. And when his daughter turned 16, she filed a no-fault divorce, tried to take the house and all the assets.
Once he was successful.
Yep. And the only thing that kept him from losing the property was when his parents gave him the house, they never put his name on the deed. They kept the deed in their name.
Well, fellas, you want to know?
So she couldn't get the house.
Well, there you go.
But guess what? After this guy helped us get the paternity fraud legislation passed in Oregon, he wouldn't do what I pleaded with him to do. I begged him, do not isolate yourself.
Yeah.
Do not stay at the house by yourself because,
you get deep.
Those voices start telling you all is lost, you're not worth anything, and all those words of what she said, and you'll never see us again.
Yeah.
He killed himself.
Yeah.
And that is part of my motivation on why I look to inspire other people. You can change what looks impossible, but you might need help. You might need to work with other people.
What you said there too is key because I felt those feelings. Don't isolate. The best thing you can do is help others. That's why I'm sitting here today doing this, speaking to Carnell. How can I turn my pain to purpose? Purpose. What are you going to do? My trial, I got a trial coming up in 2.5 weeks, Carnell, and I'm representing myself and I'm going in there with fire. Dean Tong will actually be my expert witness.
Right.
So I got a parental alienation expert in my corner, and the likes of
who has experienced the issue
himself. And he also, we talked about how you guys, that line that got crossed that turned you into a victim and sad and just wanting to fix your problem to something in your heart was like, no, not anymore. If I have a purpose, whether it's my career or my kids in the future, then I'll work on those things. But I've got to be a part of this change in my lifetime for my kids so that it's not something that my grandkids have to deal with. Carnell, where can we reach you at, buddy?
Hey, I want to make sure everybody knows this. This is not a bash on women. The number one group of people who contact me trying to help someone are women.
Absolutely. This is not a bash on women.
The number one group of people who are contacting me to get legislation changed in their state because they don't want to see it continue to happen are women. So the way to connect with me is at thepaternitycoach.com. Thepaternitycoach.com. And that one takes you to my landing page. You'll see my website. You'll see the link to the book, Trapped by Law. You'll see my YouTube channel where you will see that it is mostly married men. And you'll see men of multiple races who are paternity fraud victims. And that includes clergy, military.
Wow. Yeah, military especially.
High six-figure clergymen. And I even met up with a billionaire who was a paternity fraud victim. He didn't like it any more than I did.
Right.
The sad part about it is, how does this all converge and it gels with the equal shared parenting movement? Many of us guys who've had a relationship with the kids, we're like, we'd love to still be able to see the child, but we don't want to be under a court order where one person's mental attitude or state of mind could have them asking the court to put us in jail or prison. They should not have that ability. They should not have that kind of control.
No.
And we should be able to live our lives as free U.S. born citizens, or those of us who become naturalized. At some point we become U.S. citizens, we should be protected from these type of things, not having the court help the person rob us.
Absolutely. Yeah. Great points. Thank you for coming on. I'd love to have you back on. We'll talk soon.
And thank you for a spirited discussion.
I love your spirit. I love the fact that we keep this lighthearted, but we also get serious. You're educated, you're helping others. And I want to have you back soon. And if your son can join us, that would be amazing. I'd love to talk to him.
Well, sure. We'd have to set it up in advance because he was the alienated child.
I got it.
And look, to see your U.S. Marine after he gets out of boot camp come to your house at 19 and literally play out in the yard, he's like, man, this is like the first time I got to really be a kid. He's like, Dad, it is so peaceful at your house. Oh, how I wish that we had been together all that time. And I said, well, son, We can't change that part of it, but we can sure as heck do something now. So now I'm a grandfather of two beautiful granddaughters, Bree and Natalie, and my son's married to my daughter-in-law. They are actually down in Florida.
Beautiful.
I wrote a dedication to them as well as to my oldest sister, who didn't believe the child was mine when she was 2. And I defended my ex-girlfriend against my older sister who had my back. Listen, there's a lot of good women out there who know there are people who lie for reasons to try to stay connected, and they'll try to use a baby to anchor themselves in the life of a guy they think is going places.
Yeah.
You'll understand if you read Trapped by Law why I believe we should get more laws passed in all U.S. states and all U.S. territories that says the truth is the standard. The truth is in the best interest for all.
Absolutely. ThePaternityCoach.com. Trapped by Law is the book. Go to ThePaternityCoach.com. Check out Carnell Smith. Follow him on social media. Check out his website right there. And Carnell, I will talk to you soon. Guys, thank you so much for joining us.
All right.
For We the Parents.
Take care.
Have a good night.